messieurs and madames, au revoir. Merci.
I
Michael,
already miss you. I
miss you too, man. Listen,
miss you, buddy.
Here we are on Roundup, post Paris, where me and you, I think we can safely say now, have officially become residents of Paris via our best friend, Cyril Gane, based on our trip to Paris. I mean, the fights were amazing. The crowd was amazing. The city is amazing. You were there with your wife. You're on your vacation, basically, for your honeymoon that you've been delaying so long. We had a great time, dude. You're now in Switzerland. So tell everybody kind of where you're at and what's going on with you. And then we'll talk about how amazing Paris was for everybody.
Yeah. So I promised my wife, obviously, I owe her a honeymoon. We got married in last year in 2022. I almost said 2021. She would have killed me. But yeah, and I told her, like, I don't want to do a honeymoon until after I fought because I'm just not going to be present. I'm going to be a psychopath and want to go find MMA gyms and train when I should be sipping mojitos as I look at the French Alps from my hotel room. So that's what I'm doing right now. So it was cool. You know, it was very delayed, but you know, I got to pinch myself sometimes, Paul, because I'm so lucky that we do what we do for a living, because that kind of, it was the, I would say it was the catalyst for this Euro trip for us. Is I'm going to go work Paris, and then we're going to go roam around with no plan. We really didn't plan to be here in Switzerland. We just ended up here. So it's really cool. We're enjoying it. And it's like, I think this is the second time in my life where I've taken a vacation that's not like oriented around mixed martial arts, where it's like, just go drink, have fun, be merry, enjoy the spoils of your hard work. And so that's where we're at.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, when you think about being in that city and that it's there on business, you know, but luckily, with our job and the people that we get to work with, it quickly can turn into pleasure, and it's just an incredible event, right? So we all look at this. We got to train, we got to drink. That is at Cyril Gane's after party, which he so politely invited us to late at night. There's the man himself. We got to get him on the show sometime. That poor guy had his house robbed that night, by the way.
Oh, I know. I saw that. I mean, God, I guess that's something that like Europeans do, is they kind of scout these like football, like mainly footballers, soccer players, scout their apartments. I mean, he's an easy guy to find. He's very polarizing. So if you're a scumbag that likes to rip people off, like, you just kind of watch Cyril Gane as he moves around the city. I mean, there can't be many, 6'5", 255-pound yoked former UFC champions in Paris. So he's easy to find. So whoever robbed him, if you're actually watching Roundup, I don't ever want you to watch our show again.
Yeah.
You're a scumbag.
I don't think they are, but
I
don't want them to either.
What if they're watching it from his laptop? That'd be messed up.
Oh man, yeah, possibly holding his belt, his former interim championship belt. That's what. It's
got to make you feel good. Yeah, I stole the champ's belt. Look how it looks on me.
Yeah, and you can't, like, how do you sell it without getting figured out, right? I guess black market shit. I don't know how that stuff works, but it was a great trip and it was great fight. Cyril Gane, my God. The guy showed the improvements that he said he was going to show, talked about how he was going to have a flawless victory. I know he got hit a couple times by Spivak, but I mean, let's be honest. It was one-way traffic, just domination, got that big finish. I mean, he was like charging up power punches as he was skirting along the fence, chasing down his opponent. Another guy that stands out majorly from the card for me is, again, my favorite name to say on the UFC roster, my man, Benoit Saint-Denis.
Benoit Saint-Denis.
He's a savage, bro. People were joking about, oh, you should fight him. Oh, you're out of your, like, listen, let that man go and fight the higher up. That dude
let the man get his feet underneath him first.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. I think we got a question about him later on because he deserves it. We should be talking about Benoit. Menno Fior. There's an asterisk for that one next to it. I'm not saying she wouldn't have won that fight regardless, right? She's a very good fighter and she looked great. But it sucks that Rose had that weird finger thing going on, man. And it turns out it was just a dislocation. They would have been able to pop it back in had they tried, but whose job is that? Let's talk about that real fast before we get into the fight. Whose job would that be to figure out, am I going to try to do that? It's not, you don't call the doctors in for that.
No, because they wave off the fight.
Yeah.
I forget there was a fight in the past where the fighter like called a timeout, which actually happened to be a problem in the William Gomez fight. His opponent tried to call a timeout on the foul, and for the inadvertent.
Oh, that was a weird one.
Yeah, you never call your own fouls. But it's like, the finger compared to like Yuri Prohaska's shoulder. What happened with Yuri's shoulder when they tried to put it back in place? It mangled his arm. The last thing you want to do is like, I wouldn't trust myself to try to pull my teammate's finger back in place in a fight. What happens if I yank it the wrong way, rip a ligament, and then it's like she was able to work around it. And, you know, kind of before we get into the questions, touching on the other two things that you talked about, Benoit Saint-Denis, I think that we have a future superstar in our hands. The way he fights, the way he resonates with not just the French crowd, but the European crowd in general is going to take him in as one of their own. And the way that he fights, I mean, he's a stylistic nightmare for a lot of these guys at 155 pounds. And if you want to do, you know, perennial matchups, I mean, look at the way he handled Thiago Moises compared to the way that the champ Islam Makhachev did. I mean, he made it look a lot easier. And then when you're talking about Cyril Gane, on that same note, making it look easy, I mean, when he's in that southpaw stance, it's like if you've done your research, if you've done your homework, you know what you're getting. You're getting all these lead side attacks. But I think what makes it so hard for his opponents to pick up on is how fast he is. He moves in and out so quick. In that first takedown he defended, it was like a freaking gazelle. Like he bounced out of the arms of Sergey Spivak so fast. And it was in that moment that I said, this fight's all but over. It wasn't even like the finishing sequence where I was like, Sergey's on his way out. It was that first takedown he defended and how he handled it. I said, it's only a matter of time. He's going to finish this fight. So, you know, that was my first time attending a UFC event in Europe, not in a corner. Just, you know, I was a spectator, and that was unreal. That was amazing. Like, so any of the fans that were there, that are watching this show, kudos to you guys for showing up and showing out and showing support for your fighters. I will never forget that trip. That fight card was the best card I've ever worked. It was amazing.
Yeah, and I was there last year, and that crowd was just as good. But everything that came together this year made it so much better. Having you there, having Cyril win that fight, going to the after, it was. I mean, I was talking to my wife. I was just like, it was really, truly one of the cooler UFC trips that I've definitely had to date. And the fight delivered. There we go. Oh, this was. Where's our smokes? Did we get our smoke? There's the pack of cigarettes that we found. And you see Bisping in the background.
Snacks, too. Baby.
Yeah, it's a couple of lung snacks.
And then you got the former middleweight champion, UFC Hall of Famer Mike Bisping in the background.
Tom Aspinall's in there somewhere too, I think. I don't want. Hopefully, we're not calling anybody out, and they're like, "Yeah, they should have been home sleeping or something."
Yeah, right. Yeah, the pack of six, they really accentuate this photo nicely. I hope we shouldn't have said anything and seen if any of the fans picked up on it. Like, oh my gosh, yes, and Paul's pack of cigarette smokers.
I only had 4 cigarettes, though. That's it. It doesn't count. 4 cigarettes.
Yeah.
I didn't smoke.
I matched you. I only had 4.
Yeah.
I might smoke more while I'm here, though. I'm here for 2 more weeks, so you know, that's the one thing too. I noticed, like the first night we got there was like this nice alleyway with all these restaurants. And so Kelsey and I are going to get our first meal, and like I would get this aroma of like some really good food. I'm like, oh, that smells good. And then just like cigarette smoke. Cigarette smoke. And then it'd just be like either good smelling food or cigarette smoke. So you want to talk about a contrast in style.
They go hand in hand, man.
Yeah,
fresh
they do.
Baguettes and fresh lung snacks.
Just take the baguette and smoke it. You know, just hold it at the end. And just.
We also had escargot. We can officially say that we've had escargot.
Yeah, shout out to Michael Plant, who left me hanging with that nasty
Lappy. Lappy don't care. Listen, he's a man that knows what he likes, and if he doesn't, screw you. He was, and he held strong. Yeah, he held strong. Like, I don't care if you make fun of me. I don't care. I, however, completely fell into peer pressure and felt like if I don't eat this, I'll never be looked at the same. So I ate it.
Well, the problem with second one. So I ate Lappies, and so when I ate mine, I like scooped the meat out a little bit and then like slurped it out of the shell. So I got like the pesto and the oil. So I'm like, wow, this actually tastes good. And then Kelsey, as we're taunting Lappy, like pulls the whole meat out of the shell and like has it on a fork. And so she's like, well, I'm like, fine, I'll eat it. And I didn't have the juices, like the oils and the pesto. And I ate it, and it smelled it tasted the way a lake smells. Like if you can. Imagine that. The way that lake water smells.
Oh, I know what lake water
smells
and tastes like. I've done plenty of races where I've drank way too much lake water before. So
there's more than lake water in that lake water when you're in a race with a bunch of people, Paul.
Oh, yeah. There's lots of pee, buddy. Lots of pee. All right. So that was Paris. It was incredible. Let's move on to 5 rounds. We got some good questions. We got questions about all different kind of stuff. We're going to touch on 293 as well. Strickland and Adesanya. So let's do this. We could talk Paris all day. So we must move on. Question. After that performance, Benoit Saint-Denis, do you guys think it's fair for him to have a ranked opponent next? I'm thinking guys like Dober, Frivola, maybe Grant Dawson. Love the show and thanks for the entertainment. No, thank you. And I'll start, Michael, 100%. I think that this guy is on a finishing streak like no other. I think he obviously has proven that there's a tension behind him. He's got this quiet, serious ferociousness about him. Former French Special Forces. He delivers every time he goes in there, even on his debut when it wasn't on, when he was on the wrong end of a beating up a weight class. You know, he didn't back down for 1 second. I love all those names. I think that's the kind of guy that Benoit should be in there with next. And I think he's going to win if he gets in there with a lot of those guys. A Grant Dawson would be a fun fight because Grant is extremely physically strong when it comes to the grappling, but can he handle that pressure that Benoit Saint-Denis brings on the feet, Michael? He throws kicks like he's just trying to break every bone in your body.
Yeah, and in fight by fight, his boxing's improved very much. Like the way he was going to the body against Thiago Moises was a thing of beauty. A little bit reckless. He is one of those guys that I feel like is 100% offense, 0% defense. But the further you get up the ladder in terms of the rankings, you got to be more defensively responsible. I would say is the best way to word it. But for me, there's two names I thought of in the post-fight show. So for the fans that watch, I'm sorry if I'm beating a dead horse, but I'm going to repeat it again. I think that there's two names that stand out. One, Carlos Diego Fajeda. He's number 15. Gives him a nice entry point against a good high-level grappler. You know that that's going to be a really fun fight. Or if they're willing to give him that veteran test right away, I mean, RDA's been a guy. Well, I think RDA, he's kind of in a position where he can say yes and no to a lot of fights.
Yeah.
He's never been afraid to back down from a challenge. I mean, he fought Arman Sarukian in the main event. He's fought up-and-comers. Maybe he sees something he can capitalize on in Benoit Saint-Denis. So those are the two fights when I look ahead for Benoit that I would like to see him in for sure.
Yeah, I like that. And again, I like that RDA fight, but I do think that RDA at the level that Saint-Denis is at right now will probably be like, all right, let him win another one. And I think RDA's got to really decide, where is he going to be? Is he going to be a welterweight officially? Was that just to get back in there?
Yeah.
I think his home, honestly, he's got to be a 55er, you know. I've been in there with him and I took that fight on 5 days notice and I felt like I wasn't as shredded, but I was bigger in there.
Yeah.
And, you know,
he just carries his weight in his trunk. Like he's got, for lack of better words, he's got a huge ass. He's got big legs.
Yeah.
I remember when he got in the octagon with me at 170, I was like, whoa. I mean, up top, there's nothing there. It's overwhelming, but I'm like,
he kicks well. He's got great body kicks too.
Horse.
All right.
Yeah. Round 2. Yeah. Rose's finger injury was bad, and she's gangsta. What other nasty injuries do you remember that you didn't stop fighters from continuing? Do you remember that didn't stop fighters from continuing? Well, yeah. I mean, right off the top, Paul Felder versus Mike Perry. I mean, the guy broke his arm throwing a spinning back fist, and he kept throwing the same damn spinning back fist. I mean, come on, Paulie. Tell me what that was like. That's the this question's all you. I've never been in there. I've gone into fights with injuries, but they never really affected me. So why don't you walk us through what it's like to have an injury during a fight and to have your corner be aware of it? How did this whole thing operate? What were the interactions like? And what was it like for you as the fighter being in that situation?
So it happened early on, which is obviously worst case scenario. I think it was only a minute or two into the fight. I threw that one spinning back fist and it bounced right off the top of Mike Perry's head right here. And I knew right away I couldn't close my hand. I was still throwing it a little bit and it definitely was throbbing. Like there was this, I can't even describe the feeling. Adrenaline covered a lot of it. And then in between rounds, I was trying to force my hand close and I could feel the bones rattling, like crunching around in there when I would close it. And I told Duke and he knew. And we just went out and tried to use the jab. But man, I was on such adrenaline autopilot. I remember the amount of pain I was in even throughout that fight. And then as soon as I got backstage, and the doctors check you out and they cut the gloves off, it was just like, oh my God, you just want to like cradle it like this, right? Whenever you have an injury like that. Dan Hooker just went through the same thing. Who else did we just say? Alex Caceres. Horrible, man. You just go into defensive mode, right? Even when you're letting your offensive go, Dan Hooker did a great job of fighting through it, I thought. Caceres, you could see, got defensive. I
won. Dan Hooker won. That's the only no disrespect to you. Like, you fought your ass off. Pardon my language, Morgan. I'm giving you some editing you'll have to do after this. But you kept fighting. So kudos to Dan Hooker for not only did you fight, but you found a way to win. Like, that is like, dude, that's why you guys had that that's why you guys had such a crazy fight. Yeah. Because you both just have that mentality. You just don't back down, injury or not. Yeah. You're just going to keep coming forward.
Cut from the crazy cloth. Cut from the crazy cloth. But it can definitely affect your offensive output. And we saw that, I think, with Rose. We saw that in my fight. You saw that in Caceres' fight. Dan Hooker's different. He's out of his mind. He fought through it. So congrats to him. But yes, it's horrible. Yeah. So yeah.
I think for Hooker, though, the one thing he had going for him was he had a fading Jalen Turner. Like, Jalen really went all in on that finish. It didn't pay off. He missed weight, so he's already compromised from a cardiovascular standpoint. Not making excuses as to why Dan Hooker won, but there's also some things that kind of played into his favor.
Yeah, of course. Round three.
Ooh, going to UFC 293. Let's go.
All right. What is Sean Strickland's path to victory versus Israel Adesanya's? Well,
I'll tell you.
Go ahead, Michael.
I'll start. It's got to be wrestling. It needs to be wrestling. He needs to close the distance. He needs to put Israel Adesanya on the fence, and he needs to very much fight a style, like a Randy Couture style of fight. And I'm not just saying that because he trains at Extreme Couture, but that's just the first thing that comes to mind when I think about, like, Randy Couture versus Pedro Hizzo, Randy Couture versus Tim Sylvia. Like, you're going to have to strike with him. Yeah. You're going to be you're going to lack a little bit of length, but you need to get on inside on this guy. You need to hang on his head, collar tie, dirty boxing, short shots, lots of knees, it's not going to be the sexiest fight if you stick to the game plan that I feel would be best to utilize against a striker like Israel Adesanya, but it's the only way to beat him unless you're Alex Pereira or if you're Jan Blachowicz and you're going to be the bigger guy. But for Sean, I think you just got to make it a dirty, ugly Randy Couture style of fight.
I agree. Got to get in there, man. You now watch him flip the script on us and make us look like buttholes, but you can't sit. Sean's so good at fighting behind that jab from the outside against guys. I don't think he can do that against somebody like Adesanya. He's too long. I know he did against, he was in there with Jarrett Cannonier and had some success. Cannonier's long. Abu Nurmagomedov, but these guys are just not where Adesanya is. You can't do that. And he didn't beat the Killer Gorilla, did he? No. Right. See, so I mean, and Izzy's a step above that. Yeah. Izzy's even a step above that and kicks significantly faster, is smoother, has knees, and will have a bigger cage in which to do it in when he's fighting in Sydney. So he's got a close distance, even if it's just to overwhelm him and to get him guessing about shots. If you don't even get Israel guessing that you're going to try to take him down and you let him just comfortably fight from the outside for 25 minutes, he's either going to beat you up for 25 minutes or he's going to find a way to finish.
He just has to not let his pride get in the way. I think obviously the Alex Pereira fight, that fight didn't really go on for very long when Sean fought him. Very short night for the former middleweight champ, but it didn't look like Sean really was going to put any effort into trying to wrestle him. It looked like he was like, I'm going to go out there and outbox this guy. You can't let your pride get in the way. Sean's a great striker in his own right, but these guys, these Israel Adesanyas, these Alex Pereiras, these guys are more than a step above him.
Yeah, they're professional kickboxers for a long time. That was their martial art. That's what they were trying to make their success and their money off of. And then it just seemed like MMA was the best way to go because there was more money in it. So these guys learned how to grapple and wrestle so that they can compete at the highest level of MMA. Now, Izzy in particular is really getting there, right? He's been doing it for a while, but the guy was a kickboxer. You can't just kickbox with him.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy before we move on to round 4, something that Izzy said is, and he says he wants to get a submission as a professional in the UFC before he retires. And he thinks that he's going to get a submission against Sean. So that's something interesting because if there's anybody that's going to call their shot, and I'm actually going to believe it, if Israel says something like that, I don't think he's gassing. Round 4. Do you continue to get better and better as an analyst? You continue to get better and better as an analyst. Do you think the UFC is embarrassed to have Strickland headline a pay-per-view? It seems that the press conference may be better than the fight. I'll let you lead the dance on this one.
I don't think they're embarrassed. I think I think when you have a champion like Izzy, who's kind of been running through the division, these fights are going to happen. You're going to have to give a new blood a shot. Sean's the guy that's next up. He hasn't fought him yet. It's exciting. They've got some beef. You got to let it play out. And, you'd be surprised. Sometimes these are the fights that end up being more competitive than you think. The guy that you're like counting out from the beginning. And I think it's going to do fine down in Australia with all those fans. They haven't had to fight in Sydney. And God. Is it over 4 years or something like that? Maybe Morgan can tell me. I know we talked about it on one broadcast. It's been a really long time.
6 years almost.
Something like that, right? Yeah, since 2017. So it's going to be absolutely bananas no matter who Adesanya was going to go and face in that part of the world. There's other guys on the card that are going to bring tons of people as well. No, I think the UFC, I think they like the loose cannon that Strickland is. And if the press conference is going to be better than the fight, doesn't matter. The press conference is what people are going to watch to tune in to want to see. Is this guy going to get absolutely smoked, or does he really have a shot? And we both agree that if he plays his cards right, he definitely has a shot. He
can be competitive.
Got to go in there and be competitive. Yeah.
This is what I worry about with Sean. You have to feed the champ. When there's a guy in Israel Adesanya that, as a champion, is like always chomping at the bit to fight. Like when you get the belt, a lot of guys are like, hey, just got this thing. Like, give me like 6 months. Yeah. Like he's like, no, I want to fight next month. Like so there's a reason why he's lapping the division. It's the frequency of the fights. The guy is fighting all the time as a champion. And that's impressive. He's fighting the best up and coming guys that think about this. You're Israel Adesanya. You have to study and watch this whole division while everybody is gunning for you. And he is literally been near flawless if it wasn't for Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira. Yeah. So you have to feed the champ, and you have to feed him somebody. If they're going to do a pay-per-view in Australia, it's got to be him, or it's got to be Volk, or if Whitaker's the champ, it's got to be Whitaker. It's got to be one of these guys from down under that hold a belt that headline the card. It's just the problem is how did Sean get in the situation? Well, he's just the only guy left. There's really nobody left for Israel to fight. Like 1 through 7, he's fought everybody except for him and Dricus du Plessis. So the Dricus fight fell through due to injury. So this is what they got. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, she's over there eating something, and the only thing down here are toys and socks and things like that. So what are you munching on? Who do you think's going to win on Saturday?
Oh, so cute.
Bella, who's going to win? She doesn't.
You should start like a segment like Karen Bryan does, where you put out the treats, and see.
Yeah. What is she gonna pick? You're gonna pick both treats. That's
so cute. Hi.
Bella, breathe.
She's like, yeah, right. I'm holding my breath. But yeah, the only problem, but the last thing on Strickland I'll say is the only problem is if Strickland wins, it's a liability. The things that come out of the guy's mouth are, listen, we're fighters and we get away with, guys that commit fouls get away with a lot of stuff. But that guy with a belt around his waist, and the possibilities are endless in terms of what he could possibly say. So
yeah, Sean with lots of money in his pocket and a platform to speak. Round 5.
This one you get to talk about, Paul. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh
Paul.
Wow!
Here we go. Let it fly, dude.
All right, Big Paulie, the comeback rumors legit. Like I need to hear this from you directly. The people need to know. That's one. Paul, I'm definitely not fighting Patty the Batty. I don't think they're going to even do that to him. Ferguson, you and Jimmy Miller.
That's the response I'm looking for. Come on, let's go.
So the rumors are true, and I mean we talked about this a little bit on the desk that I'm back in the testing pool just in case I feel like these guns and these elbows still got some names on them. There might be at least one name ready here. I don't know, maybe 2. And see how it goes.
Yeah.
I'm training again. It's been since Paris. I've been either working with Michael. Nate from Extreme Couture was holding pads for me. I was back down at Marquez MMA with Sean Brady and the guys today and yesterday doing some MMA sparring and wrestling. So I won't say it's an official comeback yet, but I'm doing this sport a whole lot more. And to give everyone an update on my hips, that I know a lot of people are like, how the hell are you doing anything with your hips? My hips have always been bad. They're really bad. I'm always going to need a hip replacement in my life. That's just where I'm at. But I had like a slight labrum tear that had gotten caught in my joint that we found out. And that popped while I was in Paris. And oh my God, I would say I'm about 75% better than I was before that. So that was a huge relief. So that's just things I can definitely get some shots to make things feel better in there, and some physical therapy to keep going. And if my body holds up, and in 6 months' time, if there's a person that wants to fight that the UFC
UFC 300, a UFC 300.
That would be funny. Oh, that would be fun. Or if there's even, another card that they're lining up for anywhere in Jersey or PA somewhere.
Yeah.
That would also be fun. So
I think there was, somebody told me the pay-per-view schedule, and I'm not inclined to tell anybody this, but
dream matchup.
There's a few East Coast stops, I think, in Q1 next year. But the stars are lining for UFC 300. And I know I called for the Jim Miller fight. I think that's a fight that makes sense. I understand your grievances towards the Ferguson fight. I got to give a shout out to the guy TJ that put out the tweet for Patty the Batty, because I didn't even think about it. And I'm thinking to myself, as a company, okay, what's the safe, and this is them, the company, like, how do we assert Patty? How do we give him marquee fights that are,
give him an old guy who used to
give him an old guy? That's when, and I'm thinking this would be the biggest mistake they could possibly make, because you would mop the floor with them. Sorry to all the Patty fans that are watching this. That's just the way I feel. But I loved that tweet, the Patty one. Really, between that and Jim Miller, those are the two names that have intrigued me the most. But if there was a dream matchup for you, Paul, out of anybody on the UFC roster that's active right now, who would you like for your comeback to be? And this doesn't have to be a call out. It could be a hypothetical. I'm just saying.
It's definitely a hypothetical, right? Because we don't even know. I could end up next week and my hip doesn't act up, or I got plates in my forearm. I got a piece of lung missing. Jim Miller's up there. It's a guy I was supposed to fight. I think he's an absolute stud, an absolute legend. But a guy who's had a lot of fights, got all these records, is nearing the end of his career. I don't want to say that Jim's done by any means, because he's still winning fights and looking good doing it. But I think it would be a fight that could intrigue him too, where it's another old head who's, the one that got away. We were supposed to fight when I was on the up. And
when was that fight supposed to be? I remember the book.
April of 2015.
What card?
I think was it Newark? I think we were supposed to be on a Newark card.
Who got hurt?
Did Beneil Dariush end up taking the fight? I think.
Yes, he did fight Jim Miller. Yeah,
and that was then Beneil started to go on a bit of a surgence after that.
Yeah.
Obviously, the problem with a rematch with like Dan Hooker, he's still high he's in the rankings, he's in the mix, but any rematches that Edson's another one, I don't know if that's
this is what I love about Paul Felder, and I hate to cut you off, but this is what I love about Paul Felder's. What guy wants to rematch Edson Barboza? If there's one guy on the UFC roster where you're like, as a fighter, if I'm booked against Edson Barboza, I know I'm going to have to really take some shots to get the job done. Like, nobody really goes out and pitches a shutout against Edson Barboza without getting your legs chopped, your liver blitzed. You're just getting beat up. Like, you
peed blood twice against that guy.
And the fact that you're like, I'd fight him in a trilogy. I'm like,
this team might not
you're next level, Paul Felder. You're next level. It's crazy.
I'm crazy. But with that being said, 293 this weekend. Am I back? I'm back training. Michael's going to help me. We're going to bring him down to Philly for a little bit.
Let's go, baby.
Get him some cheesesteaks. By the way, the gym told me today, anytime you want to come down, you want to come hang out in Philly, I would absolutely love for you to come train here. So we can train here. We can train in Vegas, and I'll have to take a trip out to the Pacific Northwest.
I've just asserted myself into your camp. I want to be a part of this comeback, dude. I'm happy. If it happens, I want to help if it happens, I possibly can. Yeah.
I don't think I want to. You're definitely one of the guys I want to have around for sure.
Let's go, baby. Come on.
All right, 293 this weekend. Michael's in Switzerland. We don't know where he's going to be. Follow him.
I'll be in Italy. Next time you guys see me, I'll be about 10 pounds heavier. My cheeks will be a lot bigger.
You've already had enough.
I'm going back home. Going back to the motherland.
Yeah, coming 85, 185. Michael's coming back.
Yes, sir.
Next time we see him. All right, everyone. This is UFC Roundup. Thanks for joining us. UFC Paris was incredible. Make sure you tune in this weekend. Sean Strickland does have a chance. Make sure you watch and make sure you check out the press conference too, because I'm sure some interesting things will be said.